The cursor blinked on the screen like a tiny pulse, each flash counting down the seconds I had left before the scholarship deadline. My fingers flew over the keyboard, the quiet tap, tap, tap filling the small bedroom I had claimed as my own private refuge from the rest of the house. Outside, the December wind rattled the thin window panes, and a draft curled in from somewhere I could not see. A mug of lukewarm tea sat beside me, untouched for hours, its steam long gone. My back ached from leaning forward, but I refused to move until the last sentence felt perfect. This essay was everything. Not just words on a page, but a lifeline, a way out of this cramped, tense house, out of this town, where everyone knew everyone else's business, out from under the shadow of a family that treated me like an unwelcome guest. The scholarship was the most prestigious in the state, offering a full ride to any university of my choice. Thousands applied, but only one student would win. I had been polishing my essay for months, pouring into it the truth I could not say out loud. It was about resilience, about learning to survive in an environment where even the air felt hostile. Every sentence carried a piece of me, and every paragraph was proof that I could still dream bigger than the walls around me. I hit save one more time, then backed it up to my USB drive, the same one I kept hidden in a small tin under my bed. Chloe, my stepsister, had a habit of borrowing my things without asking, so I guarded anything important like it was gold. That night, I slept lighter than usual, the essay safe in its hiding place my alarm set for early the next morning to print it at the library. But when I opened my laptop the next day, something felt wrong. The file was gone. Not just missing from the desktop, but gone from the drive entirely. I checked my cloud backup. Empty. My stomach tightened into a knot so hard I could barely breathe. I tore through my folders, certain it had to be there somewhere. It wasn't. A ping sounded from my email. The subject line read, "Confirmation of Submission, State Scholars Program." My hands trembled as I clicked it open. The message congratulated me on submitting my essay under the name Chloe Davis. My name wasn't anywhere. The submission date was yesterday, right around the time I had left my laptop unattended to help my mom unload groceries. I felt the blood drain from my face. I ran downstairs, the printed copy of the email shaking in my hand. Chloe was sitting on the couch, legs tucked under her, scrolling her phone like she had nothing better to do. She didn't even look up when I said her name. "Where's my essay?" I demanded. She glanced at me, smirking. "What essay?" My voice rose. "The one you stole off my laptop, the one you submitted as yours." She shrugged an infuriating little lift of her shoulders. "We share everything in this house. Mom says so." I turned to my mother, who was in the kitchen stirring something on the stove. "Tell her to give it back. This is my scholarship. I worked for months." My mom didn't even turn around. "Emily, it's a family opportunity. If Chloe wins, it helps all of us. You're always so possessive about your work." Possessive. "It's mine." I could hear the desperation in my voice and hated it, but I couldn't stop. "This is my future." My stepfather, seated at the kitchen table, looked up from his newspaper with a frown. "You're being dramatic. If it's that good, we'll all benefit from it. Chloe might have a better chance of winning anyway." The words hit harder than I expected. It wasn't just that they refused to take my side. It was that they saw my work, my chance at freedom, as something they could reassign at will. Chloe leaned back against the couch, still smirking. And I realized with a jolt of sick certainty that no one here was going to help me. The wind outside whistled through the old siding, a sound like laughter in my ears. And I knew this was just the beginning of something much worse. The State Scholars Program wasn't just another scholarship. It was the scholarship. Every year, the award went to one student in the entire state. And along with it came full tuition housing, a living stipend, and the kind of prestige that opened doors for the rest of your life. Winning it meant you could walk into almost any university in the country without worrying about crushing debt or begging for loans. For me, it meant something even bigger. It was my one guaranteed escape from this house. I had been planning my exit for years. Counting down to graduation like a prisoner marks the days on the wall. Without the scholarship, I'd be stuck here, maybe forced to take on part-time jobs just to cover community college, all while still sleeping under the same roof as people who never wanted me here in the first place. I'd seen the way my stepfather's face tightened when I walked into the room, the way my mother's voice went cold whenever I questioned her decisions. Chloe never had to deal with any of that. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one they bragged about to neighbors and relatives. I was the afterthought tolerated, but never celebrated. This scholarship had been my way to tip the scales to finally have something no one could take from me. And now it was gone. The clock was ticking. The application deadline had already passed. Even if I somehow convinced them to withdraw Chloe's submission, the committee wouldn't give me a second chance to enter. In less than 24 hours, my dream had gone from certain to impossible. The weight of that realization pressed down on my chest until it was hard to breathe. I thought about the college brochures hidden in my desk drawer, about the dorm room I had imagined, the campus lawns, the library where I could study without hearing Chloe's voice through the walls. All of it felt like smoke slipping through my fingers. The worst part was knowing Chloe didn't even care about the scholarship the way I did. For her, it was just another crown to wear, another chance to make herself the center of attention. If she won, she'd spend the money on the most expensive dorm throw parties every weekend, skip classes, and somehow still be forgiven. I knew her. I knew her history. She had been handed everything and had never once appreciated it. But I also knew the scholarship board wouldn't see that. They'd see her glossy photos, her rehearsed charm, the perfect image my mother and stepfather had spent years cultivating. I could already imagine their faces on award day. My mother beaming, my stepfather puffing out his chest, Chloe posing for the cameras while I stood in the background invisible. The thought made my stomach twist. If Chloe's name ended up on that award, it wouldn't just be her victory. It would be my public erasure. The work I had done, the nights I had stayed up writing and rewriting the parts of my soul I had poured into those pages, they would belong to her. People would believe she had lived my story, faced my struggles, earned my triumphs. She would take my voice and wear it like a dress she could toss aside once she'd been photographed in it. Losing this scholarship wasn't just losing money or prestige. It was losing the proof that I could make it out of here on my own terms. And that was the one thing I had promised myself I would never let happen. I didn't know how yet, but I knew this: if I let her win, I might as well lock myself into this life forever. And that more than anything terrified me. When my mother married Mark Davis, I was 12 years old and still naive enough to believe the word family meant something solid, something safe. We had lived alone for years after my father left scraping by in a small apartment above a laundromat. My mother said Mark was our fresh start, that he was successful, kind, and ready to take care of both of us. What she didn't say was that he came with Chloe, his daughter from a previous marriage, who would soon become the center of our new household. The first time I met Chloe, she smiled at me like she was already bored. She was a year older, tall and pretty, with a confidence that felt rehearsed. Within weeks of moving in, she had claimed the bigger bedroom, the best spot at the dinner table, and every ounce of Mark's attention. It didn't take me long to realize that in this house there was a hierarchy. Mark's voice softened when he spoke to Chloe. He noticed if she looked tired or upset. If she wanted something, he found a way to give it to her. When I needed something, he acted like I was being demanding. My mother picked up on it too, but instead of pushing back, she adjusted. She started favoring Chloe too. Maybe because it made her life easier, or maybe because she thought that's what love looked like now. I don't think there was a single week in those first years when Chloe didn't take something of mine. It started with little things: hair ties, notebooks, the hoodie I wore almost every day. Then it became bigger: my birthday money, the book I'd been saving for weeks to buy a necklace for my grandmother. Whenever I complained, my mother would sigh and tell me not to make a fuss. "We're family, Emily. We share everything." That phrase became the weapon they used to justify anything. If Chloe broke something of mine, it was because accidents happen. If she ruined a project I'd worked on for school, I was told I should have kept it somewhere safer. At 12, I didn't know how to fight that logic. At 15, I started to realize it wasn't logic at all. It was control. Privacy didn't exist in that house. Mark insisted that all devices stay unlocked so we can keep each other accountable. My mother repeated the rule like it was a lesson in trust, but I knew it was a way to monitor me. Chloe used it as an open invitation to snoop through my phone, my email, anything she wanted. I would come home to find my dresser drawers slightly ajar, my desk rearranged. Once I caught her scrolling through my messages, and when I snatched my phone back, she just laughed and said, "Relax. You don't have anything worth hiding." Every time I pushed back, I became the problem. "Why are you being so defensive?" My mother would ask, like protecting my own things was some kind of flaw. The favoritism wasn't just about possessions. It was in everything: holidays, grades, even mistakes. When Chloe failed a math test, Mark told her she was still brilliant and that grades didn't define her. When I got a 95 instead of a perfect score, my mother asked what had distracted me. When Chloe missed curfew, it was because she was finding herself. When I was 5 minutes late, it was disrespect. Over time, I learned to stop expecting fairness. I buried myself in schoolwork books and the occasional moments of quiet when no one else was home. I told myself that if I could just keep my head down and excel in something they couldn't touch, I would survive until graduation. Writing became my escape. Late at night when the house was finally still, I would sit at my desk with a notebook or my laptop and pour everything I couldn't say out loud onto the page. It was the one thing that felt entirely mine until Chloe decided it wasn't. She had a knack for sniffing out anything that mattered to me. If she saw me protecting it, she wanted it. I don't think she even cared about the scholarship until she realized how much I wanted it. That's how it always worked. I wanted a summer internship at the library. She signed up first. I tried out for the school's debate team. She showed up at tryouts, barely prepared, and somehow still got picked because Mark knew the coach. The scholarship was just the ultimate prize. If she won it, it would be the final proof that she could take whatever she wanted from me and face no consequences. And deep down, I think my mother and Mark would be proud of her for it. I remember one night about a year ago, sitting at the dinner table when Chloe casually mentioned she might apply for the same scholarship. My fork paused halfway to my mouth. "You don't even like writing essays," I said before I could stop myself. She smiled across the table, slow and sharp. "Maybe I just like beating you at things." Mark chuckled like it was a joke, but I could see the way his eyes lingered on her, full of approval. That was the dynamic in our house. Chloe could openly antagonize me, and it would be met with encouragement. I could defend myself, and I'd be accused of starting drama. By the time senior year rolled around, I had learned to keep my most important things hidden. I backed up files in multiple places, kept my notebooks locked in my backpack, even changed passwords regularly. But Chloe had the advantage of access. She could walk into my room whenever she pleased. She could overhear my conversations with friends. She could lean over my shoulder while I typed and pretend she was just curious. When I finally began working on the scholarship essay, I was cautious. I didn't talk about it at dinner, didn't share drafts with anyone except my English teacher. Still, Chloe noticed. She noticed the late nights, the way I protected my laptop, the quiet determination I carried like armor. And in our house, noticing meant targeting. I should have known that the closer I got to something I wanted, the more likely she was to take it. I just didn't think she would go as far as she did. The weeks leading up to the theft felt like living under a slowly tightening noose. I had been working on the essay every spare moment I had, mostly late at night when the house was quiet, and Chloe was either out with friends or in her room blasting music. Even then, I could feel her presence pressing against the thin walls, like she was waiting for the right moment to make her move. She started asking me questions about the essay in that fake sweet tone she used when she was fishing for information. "So, what's your topic?" she'd ask, leaning casually against my doorframe. I would tell her it was about perseverance, but nothing more. Her eyes would linger on my laptop before she'd shrug and walk away, always too slowly, like she wanted me to know she could come and go as she pleased. A few times I caught her hovering around my desk when I walked into my room unexpectedly. Once I found my USB drive sitting on top of my pillow, instead of inside the tin under my bed where I kept it. I told myself maybe I had been careless, but deep down I knew she had been there. My mother brushed it off when I mentioned it. "You're paranoid, Emily. Chloe wouldn't take something important from you." It was the same script every time, the same dismissal that left me feeling like I was the one out of line. Then there were the coincidences. My laptop freezing right after Chloe had been using it to check her email. My files taking longer to load. the Wi-Fi cutting out during one of my writing sessions. When I mentioned these things to Lisa, my best friend, she raised an eyebrow and said, "You need to start locking that thing down. Chloe's up to something." I believed her, but part of me thought maybe if I just kept my head down and worked faster, I could finish before Chloe had the chance. That illusion shattered 3 days before the deadline. I came home from the library one afternoon to find Chloe sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, typing quickly. She didn't notice me at first, and I saw my essay's opening line on her screen. My stomach lurched. "What are you doing?" I demanded. She jumped and slammed the laptop shut. "Homework," she said, but her smirk told the truth. I stepped forward, and she stood up, blocking me. "Don't be so dramatic, Emily. It's just an essay." I wanted to push past her to take the laptop and open it right there, but my mother walked in at that exact moment. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice already tinged with annoyance. I told her Chloe had my essay, that she was copying it. My mother's eyes narrowed, not at Chloe, but at me. "Do you hear yourself? This constant accusing has to stop. We share in this family." I felt heat rising in my chest, but I knew from experience there was no winning that fight. Chloe was untouchable. I retreated to my room seething and worked through the night to tighten my essay's final paragraphs, determined to keep ahead of her. The day before the deadline, my mother asked me to help unload groceries. It took less than 15 minutes, but when I returned, my laptop was on the screen, still warm, and the USB drive was gone. My heart pounded as I tore through my room, but it was useless. By the time I found the drive shoved under a pile of clothes on the floor, the file was gone. She had done it. I knew she had. That night, Chloe avoided me completely, which was as good as a confession. My mother acted like nothing had happened, humming to herself in the kitchen, while Mark watched TV. I barely slept, anxiety crawling over my skin like ants. The next morning, the email arrived confirming my submission under Chloe's name. It felt like a slap I'd been bracing for but still couldn't avoid. Every suspicion I'd had, every small sign I'd tried to ignore, it had all led here. She had been planning this for weeks, maybe months, and now she had exactly what she wanted. The confirmation email was like a knife twisting in my stomach, but it was the silence in the house that made it unbearable. Chloe didn't even bother to gloat. She moved through the morning like nothing had happened, humming as she poured herself coffee, scrolling through her phone at the kitchen table. My mother was frying eggs, the smell turning my stomach. Mark sat at the counter sipping his coffee and reading the news. I walked in holding the printed email in my shaking hand. She stole my essay. I said, my voice raw. She submitted it as hers. I have proof right here. I placed the paper in front of my mother. She glanced at it for barely 2 seconds before sliding it back toward me. "Emily, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. You should be proud if Chloe wins. It means your work will still help this family." I stared at her, trying to process the fact that she had just admitted she knew I was telling the truth and didn't care. Mark didn't even look up from his coffee. "You're overreacting," he said, his tone dripping with irritation. "If the essay is really that good, Chloe will do great things with it. Don't make this into some big drama." I turned to Chloe, hoping maybe she would slip. Maybe she would at least acknowledge what she'd done. But she only smirked and said, "You should have been faster." That was it. The moment something in me snapped. All the years of being dismissed, ignored, stepped over it all, compressed into a hard, cold knot inside me. I realized then that there was no level of achievement that would make them treat me as anything more than expendable. No award, no grade, no act of kindness would change the fact that they had chosen her and would always choose her. I walked back to my room, every step feeling heavier. I sat at my desk and stared at the blank wall, my mind a storm of anger and panic. The scholarship deadline was closed. The rules were clear: 1 submission per applicant, no exceptions. Chloe had sealed my fate, and my parents had sealed their allegiance. But as the hours passed, the panic began to shift into something sharper. I thought about the essay, about the months of work I had poured into it. I thought about the details that made it mine, the personal stories, the phrasing, the rhythm. If Chloe tried to present it as her own, there would be holes. She didn't know the deeper meaning behind certain passages, the experiences that had shaped the metaphors. If anyone asked her to elaborate, she would stumble. And that gave me an idea. It wasn't enough to just expose her. If I went to the program committee, they might dismiss it as a family dispute unless I had undeniable proof. I needed to make sure that when the truth came out, it would be so clear and so damning that even my parents couldn't spin it. The thought kept me awake that night. I listened to Chloe laughing in her room on the phone, probably bragging to her friends about how easy it had been to take from me. My hands clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. I wasn't going to let her walk away with this. Not this time. In the morning, I started gathering everything, earlier drafts of the essay saved on my email timestamps from my laptop notes I had written in the margins of my journals. I took photos of each page, uploaded them to a hidden cloud folder. I printed hard copies and tucked them into my backpack. I even reached out to Ms. Grant, my English teacher, who had given me feedback on the first draft. She replied almost immediately, saying she still had the original file I had emailed her weeks ago. That was the missing piece, the version with my name in the header dated long before Chloe's so-called submission. By the time I had it, my plan was set. I wasn't just going to take this to the committee. I was going to take it to the school board, the local paper, anywhere it would be seen. If Chloe wanted to humiliate me, I was going to make sure the humiliation was hers to carry. Still, the idea of confronting my parents about it made my stomach knot. I knew exactly how it would go. They'd dismiss me, defend her, maybe even punish me for daring to challenge their golden child. So I didn't tell them. I worked in silence, smiling when I had to, pretending to drop it. Let them think they had won. Let Chloe enjoy her little victory march. The higher she climbed, the harder the fall would be when I pulled the ground out from under her. The first hint of outside help came from the last person I expected, Ms. Grant. After I sent her that quick email asking if she still had my draft, she wrote back almost instantly, not just confirming that she had it, but also saying, "Emily, I've been meaning to talk to you." Something about Chloe's submission didn't sit right with me. She explained that the scholarship committee had reached out to her for a recommendation letter after Chloe's application was submitted. They had attached the essay for her reference, and she recognized the writing immediately. It was mine. I didn't want to interfere in a family matter, she admitted, but if you're telling me she took it, I'll back you up completely. That was all I needed to hear. Having a respected teacher confirm the theft would give my case more weight than just my word against Chloe's. Ms. Grant even suggested we meet with the school counselor to start a formal complaint. I hesitated, picturing my mother's reaction if she found out I had gone to the school. But Ms. Grant's steady voice broke through my fear. "Emily, you've worked too hard to let this go. You can't keep letting people take from you." That line stayed with me. I had been living my entire life trying not to cause waves, thinking that keeping quiet was the only way to survive. But surviving wasn't enough anymore. The next day, Ms. Grant walked with me to the counselor's office. Mrs. Price, the counselor, listened as I laid out the story from start to finish. I showed her the drafts, the timestamps, the email from Ms. Grant with my original file attached. She took notes, her expression growing more serious with every piece of evidence. "This is academic theft," she said finally. "And because it involves a competitive scholarship, it's also fraud. I'll have to report it to the committee directly." My heart pounded both from relief and fear. Reporting it meant it was no longer just a family matter. It would be on record, and there would be consequences. Mrs. Price assured me she would handle the communication carefully, making sure my name was protected until the committee requested a direct statement from me. That afternoon, she called the scholarship office while I sat quietly in her office. I could only hear her side of the conversation, but the way she repeated the words "clear plagiarism" and "original author" made my pulse race. When she hung up, she told me the committee would begin an investigation immediately. "They take integrity very seriously," she said. "If your evidence checks out, and it will, Chloe's application will be disqualified." I walked out of her office, feeling like I had just taken the first real step toward freedom. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting to what Chloe and my parents did to me, I was acting against it. Still, I kept quiet at home. Chloe strutted around like she had already won, talking loudly about how she couldn't wait to give her speech at the award banquet. My mother beamed at her like she had already made them proud for life. I stayed in my room working on college applications for other programs, knowing something they didn't, that their perfect little plan was about to collapse. 2 days after Mrs. Price made the report, the scholarship committee contacted me directly. The email was formal, but unmistakably urgent. They wanted to schedule a video call to clarify concerns regarding authorship of the submitted essay. My pulse hammered as I typed my reply, agreeing to meet that same afternoon. I set up my laptop in the library away from the house, and when the call connected, I saw three people on the screen: a middle-aged woman with sharp glasses, who introduced herself as the committee chair, a younger man who handled application reviews, and another woman from the ethics board. They began by explaining that Chloe's submission had raised some questions after they received information from my school. Then they asked me in my own words to explain what had happened. I told them everything: how I had been working on the essay for months, the personal stories woven into it, the timestamps on my drafts, and the fact that Ms. Grant could confirm she had seen my original work long before Chloe's application was filed. I kept my tone calm and steady, but inside my heart was pounding. After I finished, they asked me to share the documents. I opened the folder I had prepared and screen shared the drafts, the emails, even photos of my handwritten notes. The ethics board member leaned in closer as I scrolled through the timestamps. "This is very clear," she said quietly. They thanked me for my time and promised to reach out with their decision soon, but I could already see in their faces that Chloe's game was over. Still, I didn't say a word when I got home. I wanted the truth to hit all at once like a tidal wave. That night at dinner, Chloe was glowing. "They're announcing the scholarship winner next week," she said, pretending to be modest while looking at me like she was daring me to react. My mother told her she deserved it for working so hard, and Mark nodded in agreement. I just kept eating silent, the corner of my mouth twitching upward. 3 days later, it happened. I was at my locker between classes when my phone buzzed with an email notification. Subject line: scholarship application decision. My breath caught as I opened it. The first line read, "After thorough review, your application has been disqualified due to confirmed plagiarism. The original author will be recognized as the rightful applicant." I almost laughed out loud in the hallway. It was done. I didn't even have to wait for Chloe to find out. By the time I got home, the house was chaos. My mother's voice was sharp and frantic from the kitchen. Mark was pacing in the living room, and Chloe was upstairs crying so loudly it echoed through the halls. I walked in, set my bag down, and poured myself a glass of water as if nothing unusual was happening. "Do you know what you've done?" my mother hissed at me. I looked at her evenly. I told the truth. They believed me. Mark muttered something about airing dirty laundry and ruining the family's reputation, but I just sipped my water. Chloe came thundering down the stairs, her face red and streaked with mascara. "You ruined my life," she spat. "You stole that from me." I let out a short laugh. "Funny, that's exactly what you did to me." For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. She turned on her heel and stormed back to her room, slamming the door so hard the frames on the wall rattled. My mother told me to apologize to her, to be the bigger person. But I shook my head. "No, I'm done being the smaller person, just so you can keep pretending this family works." Then I went to my room, shut the door, and let myself smile for real. The next day, Ms. Grant called to tell me the committee had officially awarded me the scholarship. My name would be in the press release, my photo on the program's website. And for the first time in my life, I didn't have to hide my victory. The fallout came faster than I expected. 2 days after the official announcement, the local paper ran a short piece about the scholarship winner, me, and mentioned almost as an afterthought that another applicant had been disqualified for plagiarism. In a town our size, it didn't take long for people to connect the dots. By the end of the week, Chloe's name was whispered in hallways and printed in texts she couldn't escape. Friends stopped replying to her messages. Teachers who had once favored her suddenly kept their distance. Even her cheer squad captaincy became shaky after the school administration decided to review her leadership role in light of recent events. I watched it all happen quietly, not gloating, just observing. Mark tried to do damage control, telling people it was all a misunderstanding, that teenagers make mistakes, but the evidence was too solid and too public. My mother went into defensive mode, insisting to anyone who would listen that the committee had overreacted, that family matters shouldn't ruin a young girl's future. But it didn't matter. Chloe's golden image was tarnished, and there was no polishing it back to perfection. The worst hit came when the school informed her she'd be barred from applying to any honor-based programs for the rest of the year. Her college applications would now carry an official note about the incident, and while it wasn't a full black mark, it was enough to make some schools think twice. One afternoon, I passed by her room and caught her on the phone, her voice breaking as she told someone, "They don't even want me for the spring program now. They said they can't risk the bad press." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her almost. But then I remembered every smirk, every stolen thing, every time she'd turned my hard work into her stepping stone. This wasn't just about one essay. It was about years of taking and never facing consequences. Now, for once, she had to live with them. At home, the tension was thick enough to choke on. My mother barely spoke to me unless it was to criticize. Mark avoided me entirely. Chloe stayed in her room for hours, only coming out late at night to raid the fridge. But I felt lighter than I had in years. I had my scholarship, my name cleared, and for once, the truth had been louder than their lies. The day I received the official scholarship certificate in the mail, I sat at my desk, turning it over in my hands, tracing the embossed seal with my fingers. For years, I had measured my worth by how invisible I could make myself in that house, how quietly I could survive without giving anyone an excuse to tear me down. But this was proof that I was more than what they told me I was. It wasn't just about the money for college, though, that would change everything. It was about knowing that my work, my words, my effort had been recognized on their own merit. No one could take it, twist it, or claim it. Ms. Grant invited me to her classroom after school to celebrate. She had a cupcake waiting and a note that said, "To the rightful winner, never stop writing." It made me realize how many people had been quietly rooting for me all along, even when I felt completely alone. I began to see that my future wasn't tethered to my mother's approval or Chloe's shadow. My value didn't shrink or grow depending on whether they acknowledged it. I carried it with me, independent and unshakable. At night in the quiet of my room, I would catch myself smiling without even meaning to. I started planning for the fall semester, researching courses, imagining a life where I could walk into my own space and know it was safe. For the first time, I wasn't just dreaming of escape, I had a concrete path out. And with every step forward, the bitterness of the past loosened its grip. I didn't forgive them, and I didn't need to. This was my life now, and I wasn't going to waste another second living by their rules. Looking back, I realized the scholarship wasn't just an escape. It was the line in the sand I had drawn for myself. It was the moment I decided that I would no longer play the role they had assigned me, the quiet background character in my own life. Growing up in a toxic family teaches you to adapt, to bend yourself into shapes that keep the peace, even if it means breaking pieces of yourself in the process. But peace built on silence isn't peace at all. It's surrender. Winning that fight, exposing the truth, showed me that breaking the cycle isn't about changing them. It's about refusing to let their version of you become the only one that exists. People asked me later if I regretted what happened to Chloe, if I felt guilty that her future had been damaged. The answer was no. Not because I wanted revenge, though I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel satisfying, but because protecting her at the expense of myself was the very thing that had kept me trapped for so long. That cycle ended with me. As I packed my bags for college, I thought about all the other Emilys still out there sitting at kitchen tables where their voices are ignored, their achievements claimed by someone else. I hoped they would see my story and know that they didn't have to wait for permission to stand up. You don't need to earn your right to be treated with respect. You already have it. The only question is whether you'll claim it. For me, the answer was yes, and it changed everything.